We won't talk to anyone except for the name on the account. This took place about 15 years ago and involved a large corporate banking entity. I forget the name of it. But for the sake of this story, let's call it Fells Wargo. It may not truly be MC. It took some creative thinking outside the box prompted by their own phrasing. You be the judge. There are some important parts that come into play. 1. My spouse and I were young and dumb financially. We both had bounced a few checks on our own checking accounts. They were closed a few years prior. 2. Fells Wargo offered a way to rehab your checking account history. They offered you the opportunity to pay them an additional $10 per month to have the right to have a checking account. They restricted the release of funds and made life difficult to even have a checking account, but if you played by their rules, you could graduate to a traditional checking account after a year. 3. I participated in the opportunity checking and graduated my account. My spouse had lived without a checking account for a few years and wanted to try again. 4. I took my spouse to Fells Wargo. We specifically explained their previous history and specifically asked for the shitty checking rebuilding account. We knew my spouse needed to start at the bottom. 5. The manager of the branch enters the basic information and declared there was no need for the rehab checking account. They qualified for the regular account. We asked again to be absolutely sure. Yes. No rehab needed. Here's some starter checks. Your ATM card will be in the mail in a week. Gladly took an initial cash deposit of $500. Fast forward a week. We get the ATM card. Call to activate it. Your account has been closed. Why? We determined you have bad checking history previously. We go round and round about how we covered this. Disclosed it up front and asked for the checking rehab account. You will have to go back and open that account if you want it. We can't change the account. So, they're closing the account. Because we needed to have the rehab checking account. The one we specifically asked for, and they refused. Facepalm. My spouse didn't know what to say, so we got on speakerphone. I started asking questions. So, will you pay the outstanding checks and refund the rest? No. We won't pay any checks. You'll be charged for returned checks from your merchants. My spouse wrote 3 checks totaling less than $100. Very few places accepted starter checks. They have the funds in the closed account to pay them. Where is the issue? We don't do that. At this point, they became flustered. Nobody seems to ever have the funds or the audacity to demand them to pay checks written in good faith. They had no answers on how they refused the checking account we requested and would have been okay to have. They didn't think they had a responsibility to notify us the account was closed. And how dare we challenge their policy? They didn't like how I kept pointing out how there wasn't a single thing we did wrong, but they think they are not responsible for returned check fees. So they decided to not talk to me any longer. They hung up. We call back. Repeat. Finally they offer this gem. We won't talk to anyone except the name on the account. Click. Their only possible choice to avoid a difficult discussion where they own their mistakes was clinging to not letting someone else ask questions with the account holder's permission. They even refused to let me tell my spouse what to ask and respond to my spouse directly. Can only talk to the name on the account? Okay. So I called back. Miraculously. In 60 seconds. I now identified as a different person. Thanks for calling Fells Wargo. May I have your name? Quote. Spouse's name. Long pause. You aren't. Spouse's name. Quote. Sure I am. Ask me anything. Name. SSN. Address. Mother's maiden name. Dob. Quote. Verified it all as the name on the account. Long pause. No, you aren't. Spouse. Quote. Why do you say that? Because you're a man. Wait a minute. That's why you closed my account? Because I'm a man? I'm pretty sure that's against ECOA. Maybe Reg B. Laws stating discrimination on gender is illegal. Banks can't reference gender or other protected classes to close accounts. Please hold. A manager finally comes on. We have a little back and forth about who I identify as. But seeing how I'm not doing anything except demanding they pay checks on my spouse's account, written by my spouse, with funds in their possession, there isn't much they can fight. But they finally agree to pay the 3 checks from the funds in the account. They didn't want to, even in the end, but the name on the account demanded it. Fallout? They had to do the right thing after wasting hours fighting it. I had an issue with Webster Bank a long time ago. I checked my bank account and I was something like negative $200. I added up the overdraft fees and they were roughly $350. So I call and ask how I can be negative less than the total of the overdraft fees. They gave me some BS explanation on how they were legit overdraft fees, and I asked if they could provide physical documentation that those are legitimate charges. They said no. I said you'll be hearing from me and hung up. I checked my account about a half hour later and the fees were gone and my account was positive $150. I recall working in the call center for a debt collector in the UK, regulated by the FCA and CSA, along with their obligations under the Data Protection Acts 1998 and 2018. EU GDPR. They took data protection very seriously. However, if someone answered the questions with all the correct answers, we were told that the law obliged us to pass them through the data protection stage and do anything to the account that we were allowed to do, that they requested. No messing around with stuff like, you don't sound like Mrs. So-and-so. You sound like her husband who called in 10 minutes ago. If they had the correct answers to all our questions, they got access. Our cable account is in my husband's name, but I pay the bills. So when there's an issue I deal with it. At some point, they tried to use the, we can only talk to the account holder, crap. So I hung up, called back, and just said I was, husband's name. There was a brief hesitation, but I answered all the security questions, since I'm the one who set up the account anyway. Then I authorized myself to access the account. When my mom died and we were trying to close accounts or switch names on them, things like paying off mortgage and changing name on utilities, things that needed to be done soonish after she passed, I was told repeatedly they would only speak with the account holder. I understood they were just following their training, but damn, she was dead. How are they going to get in touch with her? I told one person that they would need a medium or Ouija board to speak to her, and if they did make contact, to have her call me because I wanted to speak with her too. I had an interaction with a bank at work that was similar. At the time I worked for a company that was the parent company, and there was an offshoot branch for one aspect of what we did. We shared the same contact information and bank accounts, and the offshoot branch specifically stated they were a branch of the parent company. I called trying to sort something out with the bank, and as is standard practice for what I was doing, they had to verify I was authorized on that particular matter, which involved giving some details about the matter: name, address, reference numbers, and the name of the company I was calling from. At the time I was working for an area of the parent company, so I identified myself as being from there. Didn't even think of the offshoot branch immediately, since our work rarely crossed over in that way. Several times the bank told me I wasn't authorized because our company wasn't on the authorized list. tried the offshoot branch after a while and explained that we were the same company. Same contact information etc. Plus I had answered the other verification information correctly. Wouldn't talk to me at all because I wasn't authorized. Hung up the phone frustrated. Called the number straight back. Identified myself as being from the offshoot branch and suddenly they could do what I needed in. Talk to me about anything I needed to know. Woman facepalming. Bank with your local credit union. Never trust these huge fucking banks. This bank and others are directly responsible for the economic meltdown in the mid-2000s. And our government bailed them out as a reward for devastating the economy and lives of millions of citizens. Brilliant execution. A few ways to avoid some pitfalls with banks. 1. Never opt in to overdraft protection. Around 10 years ago, the regulations changed in the US to make overdraft protection opt-in. Now they sell it as a feature. Great. 2. Don't make purchases with a debit card if you can help it. Only use your checking account for bills. Credit cards have much better fraud protection than debit cards. And in the event of fraud, they don't already have your money. They have the CC company's money. If you can use credit responsibly, do so. If not, pay cash. 3. Pay bills first. Then take out your spending money in cash. That way you can't overdraw your account. And you know exactly what you have to spend. These are all lessons I've learned the hard way. I wanted to renew my home insurance but found price on the internet was half their renewal quote. Rang up to be told that the internet price is only for new customers and anyway they won't renew or even talk to me as our insurance is in my wife's name for data protection regulations. I replied that since the insurance is in my wife's name, I technically was a new customer. Oh, and even telling me the insurance was in my wife's name was a data breach. So would they like to honor the new customer price? Or would they like me to report them to the data protection registrar? I got the new customer price. I have this trouble just by myself. I am a woman with a man's name. That was the name my parents gave me. I've had it all my life. I look and sound like a woman. Usually over the phone. People pause. Or they'll say, "Wait, you're 6 low cotton?" I recently had a job recruiter ask if I was a woman. Super illegal. Yes, I am a woman. Yes, I have a non-traditional name. It's not that complicated. Interesting addition. My sister also has a man's name. When she got married to a man, her wedding announcement in the paper announced it as a gay wedding. Edit. Added an Fels Wargo is awful. They were even worse when they were walk all over Wachovia. Years ago I was banking with Chase Bank while I was married to my now ex-wife. I found out she was cheating so I sent her to the curb. We had a joint account and in my rage I hadn't processed that she was going to screw me financially. As I was very young and dumb, I went to go withdraw money and it turned down my transaction. I checked my balance and it was $500 negative. I asked what was going on and here my ex was charging everything she could on the account. I asked to close the account and I was going to pay the fees and just chalk it up to life. The manager said that being there were outstanding charges the account couldn't be closed. I asked, well then can we cancel her card so she couldn't keep charging? They said no, she had the right to keep charging to the account. We went around and around about how to fix this and they were not budging. They seemed to like that. They were going to collect tons of fees. I finally got pissed and said okay then I'm going to Best Buy and I'm buying all new appliances and TV and anything else I could charge and then never pay the bank or fees. The manager says you can't do that. I said why, you're letting my ex do this. He finally said, "Okay, I'll put a hold on the account and then we can close it." I ended up with about $700 overdrawn, but I was able to take care of things. After that experience though, I stopped using Chase Bank, and to this day I won't even use a Chase ATM. I work in call centers and I can't tell you often I had people call in for their spouse or their boss and flip when I can't talk to them. It's literally the law in most cases. I remember one very aggravating personal assistant who had made a purchase in her boss's name. She kept screaming, not hyperbole, actual screaming, that her boss was too important to speak to someone as unimportant as me and I'd have to speak to her if I wanted to resolve the issue. She'd called us, and there was no issue. They were just impatient for the delivery. I told her very clearly and in the most nudge wink wink voice I could, that I could only speak to the person whose name matched the name currently on the account, even if she had the login details, and that her boss could change the name to her name if he wanted her to use the account. After 5 times of her ringing back screaming at me telling her the above and then having to terminate the call due to abusive language, she finally called back and the name in the account was magically hers. She immediately launched into, "Oh, so now you are willing to speak to me. See, I can game the system and now you have no choice but to help." I hope she could hear my eye roll down the line because I could certainly hear her shit-eating grin. I had to terminate the call for abusive language again 30s later when I told her there was no issue. Her order would arrive at the time specified during purchase and couldn't be expedited any further. If you try and play pigeons at chess, they'll knock over the pieces shit on the board and still tell their friends that they won. Not exactly malicious compliance, but I went into Ludden Sync. You know, the cable company in 2018. Me. I would like to pay this bill current and change the name on the account. Customer Service Rep. CSR. We cannot change the name on an account. Me. Alright, I would like to pay this account current and close it. Then, I would like to open an account in my name at that address. CSR. We cannot close an account unless we are requested to do so by the account holder. In fact, I cannot even discuss the account with you. Me. How about this? I will stop paying this bill for her. You eventually will get tired of that and will discontinue service with a large unpaid bill. I will then come in and open my account at that address. When you try to get me to pay this old bill, I will remind you that you cannot discuss the account with me. While I slid my late wife's death certificate across the counter. CSR. I'll go get my manager. Suddenly, I could pay the account current and change the name. That bank is pure unadulterated evil. I had an account with them decades ago. They kept reopening the closed account and charging fees. After several confrontations and making very public scenes with the branch manager, and threatening to call state and federal regulators, I finally forced a stop to it. It got to the point where I actually completed artwork to have printed on a black tee at my friendly local printer. Brokeback Mountain was out in theaters then. I downloaded some gay porn image, traced the outline, made sure cowboy hats were clearly visible, created a silhouette of this in a white pup tent, traced a stagecoach to put behind it, without horses, drew their logo and logotype, and a big caption that read, "I knew they had an obsession with the Old West, but I wasn't expecting a Brokeback customer experience from them. So help me, I was willing to put that on the back of the tee and wear it every time I had to stand in line there." I had to cancel a hotel reservation a few months ago. It was under my wife's name due to her usually accumulating the rewards points for the family. I got the same run around. So I hung up and called right back. My wife has a very female name. But I used my normal deep voice. There was a long pause. I could tell the person on the other line was processing what was happening and realizing there was nothing they could do about it with risking offending my wife on the off chance my wife was transgender. Reservation canceled. This reminds me of a case I had working for an insurance claim handler. The claimant had unfortunately passed away, and the wife was an authorized contact on the account. One day she calls in, gives her identifying info, and asks that I set up security questions with her over the phone to lock out anyone else who has the identifying info. The reason? She was concerned the claimant's sister would get access to the account and find out how much the insurance paid out. I explained that the sister would need to give the identifying info to get access. She says the sister has the info. She'd given her the info to help deal with the claim. I tell her that's unfortunate, but I still can't set up those questions with her. She asks why. I say, because you could be the sister calling in with the right info and set up questions to lock the claimant's wife out. She hung up soon after. It's a satisfying feeling to throw laws in banks' faces. Lol. Back when I was a kid, I'd regularly have to call Crapcast and pretend I was my dad in order to get them to fix their crappy internet service. Wells Fargo is a rotten to the core company that nobody should have anything to do with. Years ago, I went to a Wells Fargo branch to cash a check written by an account holder. Everything was more important than cashing my check. Most staff were opening new accounts or wheedling account holders to get more banking services. There was one staffer handling regular customer transactions, and she wouldn't even look at me, because she was solely focused on drive-through customers. After she'd finished with a drive-through customer, and the next one hadn't yet appeared at the window, I asked her to help me. She rolled her eyes and said she was working the drive-through. I replied that she was only staffer dealing with ordinary transactions. She rolled her eyes again and turned back to the drive-through window. I blew my stack, demanding that my transaction be dealt with by somebody right now. The ugly, bug-eyed branch manager said I would just have to wait. I said, "No, you're going to complete my transaction now." She repeated her statement and admonished me for being loud. I replied, "Just complete my transaction, and I'll get the hell out of here." She told me not to curse. I narrowed my eyes and said, "You have never heard cursing like you're about to hear if you don't get somebody to serve me right now." She made the drive-through cashier serve me. She literally threw the money at me. I just made a low chuckle and said, "I'm going to ignore this. Because the way you treat customers, this branch will be closed within a year." And it was. Also, Wells Fargo sucks.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.